So this is one of the most unpredictable starts to an NFL season that I can recall in quite some time. It doesn't matter if a team is down their best defensive player and has only had a new starting quarterback for less than 2 weeks, they can still win a primetime game against a bitter rival. I'm sure there will be even more wild upsets this weekend too, and there are plenty of injuries worth talking about that could affect the outcome of some of these games, as well as intriguing storylines worth keeping eyes on. So let's talk about all that and more right after. Alright, first up, last night was the Battle of the Geezers, or the Unk Bowl, as the internet is calling it. 40-year-old Joe Flacco and the Bengals going head-to-head with 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. They became just the second pair of quarterbacks to start a game at 40 or older. Drew Brees and Tom Brady were the other two, and they had multiple matchups in their 40s. Now, I will say this game was way better than anybody, including myself, expected. It was a shootout that went right down to the wire. Primetime football at its finest. Pittsburgh took a late fourth quarter lead after Rodgers rolled out and hit Pat Freiermuth for a 68-yard touchdown on the second play of the drive. I think Rodgers was up past his bedtime, though, and that's why he was a little cranky when his teammate Broderick Jones came up and tackled him from behind, celebrating the touchdown. The video is honestly hilarious all the way around, but without trolling here and being honest, I do not blame Rodgers for being pissed off here. Broderick Jones is 6'5" and over 300 pounds, so yeah, tackling your 40-year-old quarterback from behind is not a good idea. It was an accident, but it was crazy series of events there, from the touchdown to Rodgers getting tackled and yelling at Broderick. It also hurt to watch, I'm sure. Joe Flacco carved them up one last time on the game-winning drive, setting up Evan McPherson for a 36-yard field goal. That gave Cincy the win, 33-31, and it was Flacco's 23rd fourth quarter comeback of his career. He was excellent pretty much all game, throwing for 342 yards and 3 touchdowns while not turning the ball over a single time for the second week in a row. A big upgrade, to say the least, from Jake Browning. He was absolutely unplayable. Now, they even called a run play. It was like an option for Flacco at one point, and he actually picked up 12 yards and a first down. My eyeballs almost fell out of my head. Now, all of this does help when you have Jamarr Chase out there, one of the best receivers in the NFL, and I'm not sure if Flacco knew he had other receivers or not. Joking, because T. Higgins had nearly 100 yards himself, but Jamarr Chase was targeted 23 times in this game. That's tied for the third most in a game since targets began being tracked back in 1978. My dad was like 2, and Chase turned those into 17 catches for 161 yards and a touchdown. And with that, he became the 4th receiver in NFL history to have 2 games with more than 14 catches in the same season. The milestones don't stop there either, because last night he joined Randy Moss and Jerry Rice as the only 3 players in league history with 6,000 receiving yards and 50 or more receiving touchdowns in their first 5 seasons. Basically, Jamarr Chase is pretty good at football. Old man Rodgers made some history of his own last night too. He passed Big Ben Roethlisberger on the all-time passing yards list and moved into the top 5, but it was the Bengals' night. Even their ground game was working, and that's how you know they were destined to win. Chase Brown rushed for 108 yards on just 11 carries, his first 100-yard game of the season. Shoot, it was even his first time even cracking 50 this year. So shout out to that O-line for their performance as well. The defense did allow 31 points. No real surprise, that is their big-time weakness, and they were also without Trey Hendrickson, but they did make a couple of huge plays, like DJ Turner ripping this ball away from DK Metcalf and somehow staying in bounds for this pick. Aaron Rodgers threw another just awful pick in the first half. I don't even know what he was thinking there. And when the parity in the league is this close, if you win the turnover battle, you do have a pretty good chance of winning this game, and that is indeed what happened. Now, it's worth noting, speaking of the secondary for the Bengals, that one of their top corners, Cam Taylor-Britt, was a healthy scratch for this game, and that leads some people to believe he could possibly be getting traded in the coming days, so we'll have to monitor that. But in the meantime, the Bengals do have a chance to get on a bit of a roll here. They're just 1 game below 500, and they've got the Jets next on their schedule, then the Bears before their bye week. So 5-4 heading into the bye is not out of the question. Then they play the Steelers again, which will obviously be a huge game. The AFC North is weaker this year with the Ravens and Browns both at 1-5. The Steelers are 4-2, but they've got the Packers, Colts, and Chargers before that second matchup with Cincy. And if the Bengals win that one too, things could get pretty interesting down the stretch. Now, I do want to say this is kind of an embarrassing loss for the Steelers to give up over 400 total yards. Like, how in the heck did you let Joe Flacco come in there with less than 2 weeks under his belt in a new system and do that to you? Pretty crazy. I think the turnovers obviously played a big role there, but a great win to Cincy, and I don't know what the Steelers are going to be doing over there. And speaking of things getting interesting, there's a ton of fascinating storylines and things to watch out for this weekend. Week 7 of the NFL has some pretty intriguing matchups to say the least, so I'll talk about all that and more coming up next. But first, here are 3 of my favorite picks for this weekend's games using Underdog, the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports, and of course, the season-long partner of the channel. The Rams defense hasn't allowed a single rushing touchdown to a running back this year. Then Travis Etienne hasn't gotten in the end zone since week 4, and I don't think he will this week either, so take the lower on half of a rushing touchdown for him. It's been a struggle for Saquon and the Eagles' run game this year, but they've got a great matchup this week against the Vikings, who are allowing over 132 rushing yards per game, which is bottom 10 in the NFL, so I like the higher on his 49.5 rushing yards. We're going running back heavy here because my final pick is Quinshaw Judkins hitting the higher on 69.5 nice rushing yards. This is the best matchup possible for him as the Dolphins are dead last in stopping the run this year. I mean, they just gave up over 200 yards to Rico Dowdle in week 5 and then 124 to Kamani Vidal last week, a guy who was on the practice squad up until that game. And if these 3 picks hit, you can win up to 2.67x on your money. So tail them if you'd like, or you can make your own picks and win up to 1,000x on your money by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player's stats. Just make sure to use code CBTH, where any new signup who uses that code can play just $5 and get $100 in bonus funds plus a gimme pick in the lobby. All right, for week 7, interestingly enough, we are going to witness the first battle of left-handed quarterbacks in nearly 20 years, and as a fellow lefty myself, I'm going to enjoy that one. Just kidding. It's the Browns and Dolphins who are facing off in a pretty gross matchup between 2 1-5 teams, but Dylan Gabriel and Tua Tagovailoa will be the first lefties to go head-to-head since Mike Vick and Chris Sims back in 2006. And then Carson Wentz will be playing his former team in the Eagles on Sunday. J.J. McCarthy is going to miss another week due to his ankle injury, but he's not technically out for the game. He's going to serve as the emergency third quarterback with Wentz starting and the rookie UDFA Max Brosmer backing him up. Carson's been dealing with an injury of his own to his non-throwing shoulder. I think it's actually he's in a pretty decent amount of pain, we'll just say that, but he's going to be the man under center against Philly. The Eagles drafted Wentz 2nd overall back in 2016, and he was on his way to an MVP season in 2017 before a season-ending ACL tear. We all know what happened next. Nick, big you-know-what, Foles led them to a Super Bowl win, and the rest was history. Wentz hung around until 2020, but has played with 5 different teams in the last 5 years. He has played against the Eagles once before as a member of the Commanders in 2022, but they got blown out. Philly's coming off of 2 straight losses, so you know they're going to be fired up for this game. Meanwhile, the Vikings are coming off their bye week, so they've had a couple of weeks to prepare for this one. I think Philly ends up taking this game and ending it with a W over there for them because it's hard to see the reigning Super Bowl champs losing 3 straight, but hey, crazier things have happened. Carson Wentz is not the only guy squaring off against his former team on Sunday. Mike Vrabel and the Patriots are down in Tennessee for a showdown with the Titans, the place where Vrabel coached for 6 years and made the playoffs 3 times, including a trip to the AFC Championship in 2019. Vrabel has downplayed the significance of any kind of a revenge game, but you know deep down he wants to stomp the piss out of his former team based on how things ended. It should be an easy W to get, though. The Titans are in disarray and just fired their head coach, so this will be the first game with the interim coach, Mike McCoy, filling in. I think New England gets the W here over the 1-5 Titans, and if they do, it'll be the first time since 1961 that they will win 3 consecutive regular season road games, and I did have to double check that one, and yes, it is true. The Saints have allowed multiple passing touchdowns in 8 straight games, which is the longest streak in the NFL, so look for Caleb Williams to have a productive day against that defense. Rome Odunze is tied for the 3rd most receiving touchdowns in the league with 5, so this is a very nice matchup for him. Jonathan Taylor also has a great matchup this weekend against the Chargers. You know why? Well, Taylor leads the league with 4 rushing touchdowns outside the tackles. Meanwhile, the Chargers have given up 5 rushing touchdowns outside the tackles. This season, that's the most in the NFL. Taylor leads the NFL in carries, yards, and rushing touchdowns so far this season, and I expect that to continue against LA. This should be a great game, though. The Chargers got a much-needed win last week after dropping 2 straight, but I am going to roll with Danny Dimes and the Colts in this one, especially as a Chiefs fan. I need the Chargers to lose, please. It is also worth noting that one of Indy's cornerbacks, Charvarius Ward, a former Chief, is out for the second game in a row with a concussion, and what's so crazy about this to me is it's because he was injured just before last week's game during pre-game warmups after colliding with a teammate. So Ward is now missing another game, his second in a row, which is definitely unfortunate. Now, there's honestly a lot of other great matchups this weekend. One I will be watching is Lions and Bucks on Monday Night Football. Should be a banger. It is in Detroit, and the Lions could make history because they've scored at least 30 points in 5 consecutive home games, and if they do it on Monday, they will set a new franchise record. Defensively, they'll be without Brian Branch and multiple other cornerbacks, but Branch was suspended for punching Juju Smith-Schuster after the game, and it was upheld after he tried appealing, so he's going to be suspended. Then Kirby Joseph is also expected to be out with a knee injury. It might sorta kind of even out though because Tampa's going to be without Emeka Egbuka and Chris Godwin, as well as Bucky Irving, although Mike Evans is back from his hamstring injury for the first time since week 3. Who knows if he'll be 100% though. I expect tight end Cade Otton to get a lot of targets in this one, as well as the rookie Tez Johnson, who caught a touchdown last week. Then with Bucky Irving out, it's going to be Rachaad White leading that backfield once again. Rams-Jags is another solid game. Both teams are coming in at 4-2, but LA is going to be without Puka Nacua, who was ruled out with an ankle injury. That means more work for Devonte Adams, who's been solid this year with nearly 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Puka's not the only receiver missing this week, though. I already mentioned Egbuka, but then Garrett Wilson was ruled out as well with a knee sprain. The Jets' passing offense was already horrible with Wilson, so I can't wait to see how it looks on Sunday against the Panthers. There's been a lot of chatter about Tyrod Taylor taking over Justin Fields' job as QB1. Some Jets players are reportedly even in favor of it, but Aaron Glenn is riding with Fields for at least one more game, although if they drop to 0-7, you got to be thinking change is coming some way, somehow. Jaden Daniels could be in for a challenge this week as Terry McLaurin is going to miss his 4th straight game with a quad injury, and Deebo Samuel is questionable with a heel issue. He didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, but did in some capacity today, so he might be out there, but if he is, probably not at 100%. The Cowboys secondary won't be 100% either, though, because Trevon Diggs was ruled out of this game with a concussion, and it's pretty surprising because it popped up out of nowhere today. Apparently, he suffered a concussion at his home in some kind of an accident. That's all the details we really have. I don't think it was like an altercation or anything like that, but had to have been a pretty freak thing to suffer a concussion inside of your own home. What happened? Don't know. The whole thing is strange, but he's not going to be there for this division rivalry game. It sounds like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray both could be game time decisions for the Cardinals after Jonathan Gannon kept his cards pretty close to the vest on their statuses today. Kyler missed last week with a foot injury. Then Marv left the game with a concussion, but has been limited in practice, so there is a chance he can clear protocol in time. The Cardinals need all the help they can get, man. They're hosting the Packers and are in danger of falling to 2-5. And in the ever so competitive NFC West, going 2-5 would basically be the kiss of death on their season. Speaking of which, the 49ers have ruled out Brock Purdy ahead of their Sunday night game against the Falcons. So it'll be Mac Jones getting the start once again, though he's going to be without Ricky Pearsall, who is set to miss another game with a knee injury. It's not all bad news, though, for them on offense because George Kittle has been activated off of IR and is going to play Sunday night without a snap count. At least that's what's being reported. Kittle hasn't played since week 1 when he injured his hamstring, so having him back out there should do wonders for that offense. Jawan Jennings is also good to go this week. This man is on the report, though, with an ankle, rib, and shoulder injury, so he might be out there in a full body cast, but he's going to be out there. Regardless, I am nervous about the 49ers defense right now because obviously you have no Nick Bosa or Fred Warner for the rest of the season, but we'll see how it shakes out. Make sure to let me know in the comments down below some of the most intriguing storylines that you are watching for or that you learned about in this video, and then what games are you most excited about? And with that, I'll see y'all next time.